In fact, I'm not even looking at it because I know this guy. It is John Batiste, Grammy Award winner, incredible artist. Oh. Oh, well then let me bring up Kamel to the stage and maybe we hear from you with regard to, we are going to speak.
John is a little delayed. We know this is Davos. Always timings are extended and reduced at all times.
Well, should we be speaking to our audience then about what's, well, then let's talk a little bit more about, I want to talk about why, the genesis of why we are here at USA House, and I'm happy maybe we should talk to the audience.
Yeah, but actually, can we see, is there any way of getting any microphones? And let's see if we can have a few thoughts from the audience.
Yeah, because the genesis of this for us was we wanted to do, you know, basically a Fortune 500 innovation forum later this year. And I was thinking, how do we create an ongoing conversation around America, not just innovation in America, but America as a partner, America as a magnet for talent, America as, in some ways, the gold standard for the rest of the world, and looking at manufacturing, AI, and just, frankly, I think places like Davos are a fantastic village green to bring people together. How do we in the country also bring people together around a lot of the possibilities, not just on the regulatory front, but on the technology front, and how are we actually making the next generation of workers come out? So we have some mics here.
We have some mics.
If you have, raise your hands if you want to give some reaction. Hello, I saw you were getting your photo taken earlier with Kellyanne. Just some reactions to how you're feeling about the state of innovation, the state of business in America right now, and any thoughts to add. So we have a gentleman right here.
And do say who you are, it'd be brilliant.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I'm Adnan Hassan. I used to be on the board of directors of the World Bank in Washington, and I run a family office. Innovation is obviously the lifeblood of the new era that's coming up. Large countries in general have a longer distance between the regulator and the market. It generally takes you 3 to 5 years to get regulatory clarity between the executive, legislative, judicial, and also the different interests. In a small country, the same process can be done over a dinner. How do large countries, like the United States, manage the complexity of navigating these multiple interests versus Singapore? And in a period of dramatic change that's guaranteed for the next 5 years, is President Trump a unique actor in the sense that he was able to sort of force the process, cut through the various interests, and can he be repeated? Whereas in Singapore, just to take an example, you don't have that kind of complexity. Mm-hmm.
I think I should be working the room. You up here, okay. Me down here, and thank you. That's not to in any way shut you. I think that's a very valuable comment.
I would just say one thought on that is that I think that is what President Trump is attempting to do. But I think it goes back to Ray Dalio's point, which is that the rules-based order is there for a reason. The reason we have regulations, the reasons we have the rule books, and they are more complicated the bigger you get, is because we demand, don't we, some form of democratic control, that things can't be forced through by diktat of a single person. Obviously, in America, you have a presidential system. In Europe, that is less often the case, and certainly for the United Kingdom, where I live, that is not the case at all. So the regulations, the controls, the systems, they take a long time.
Bankruptcy law.
But they're there for a reason, because they are there. The argument is to protect democracy, to protect society. And I think what Ray is saying and what the president is offering is a new model, but do the public want that new model?
I'd love to, is there any, I'm going to go to you and say, any other comments back here that people want to make, either to what President Trump has been, said, but also what you're seeing. And also, if there's hesitations, I want to make sure we have the multiplicity of views here, because, of course, that's, I think, what makes America great. So, hi.
Arun Gupta was a venture capitalist for 25 years and now CEO of a foundation. We have a $500 million endowment all around trying to get innovators in public service.
I'm going to turn you here so you can see everybody.
and so
There.
my,
there.
Get your best shot.
I guess my comment is, and I think it's amplified here in Europe, but how we think about who goes into government, I think we're at a tipping point right now. We need to see more technologists, younger folks, innovators being able to go in, but also come back out, because they're not going to want to have careers in government. And how we create those interdependencies will be incredibly important if we're going to try to keep an innovation ecosystem going. And I guess my question to you is, are you seeing a change in Europe on that front? It's slow, but starting to happen in the US. And we're trying to create those structural interdependencies as opposed to just independence between the public and private sector.
We should mention you're investing in education.
Yes.
You're not, as is Ray Dalio, by the way. So go, be a pundit on Europe. Come on,
I think,
tell us what's going on.
Europe has a major problem of agreeing rules even within the European Union. And that comes down to how Europe regulates technology, how it funds technology, and is one of the major reasons why we don't have an alphabet in Europe, why we don't have OpenAI in Europe, and why we haven't been that successful in Europe in creating mega tech companies that can really change the dial. And I first became a business editor in the UK in 2009, and they were talking then about capital markets coming together and being one system within the European Union. And that still is a debate we are having 16 years, 15 years later, the same discussion. And actually, I think around the problem is there's a slight drift in the opposite direction. We've had Brexit, of course. That's a big tariff shock to the European Union and to the United Kingdom. So we are becoming more shored towards nation states within Europe and less. Europe as a bloc is the size of the United States. Europe as a system of 30 countries is nowhere near. And I think you make a very strong point about the need for interoperability between the nations and not having its own regulatory country-by-country approach. But there's little evidence of that.
So we have a comment over here. What is your name?
My name is Flamur. Yes, my name is Flamur. I'm coming from the United States, from particularly Chicago. And I'm Albanian from the Balkans, from North Macedonia. And my question is, what will be done about the development in the Balkans and the security and the economic development?
Yeah.
I think, Diane, there'll be more.
We're stretching the
I don't want to
depth of
reach
your
into
knowledge
areas I am not in any
there. I
way
could give you my
expert
view of
in.
the Balkans, but I'm going to keep
But I think that's an
for
important
after.
point. Is there
That's
anyone
right.
here with security knowledge who might be able to answer any of something like that?
I'm glad to have the perspective, though, of somebody who didn't necessarily, born and raised. I'm from Canada and Scotland originally, and I think it's a reminder to me that to be American is to be many things. So I think that's. But if anybody have some comments on the Balkans, of course, go ahead.
There's someone on the left.
Do we have?
There,
There we go. Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, it's former ambassador from Serbia. Let me race over because this. I know thought leadership when I see it. Here you go. Thank you, sir. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Well, it's a million-dollar question here from the gentleman in Macedonia. Definitely, the Balkans have kind of stayed behind whole EU integration, and the economic development has been a little bit progressing in past couple of years, but not enough. I think in the time when we have so much uncertainties in terms of NATO, in terms of Russian involvement in Ukraine, and China's more and more involvement in the Balkans, I think it's important to find a way to push more towards integration into EU. And I think that will be one of the main ways how the big peace process that EU was for the European enemies to continue on to the Balkans but nowadays in this geopolitical situation with United States and EU, it's really difficult to see how that's gonna happen. Would you want to add something?
We had the Balkans Forward initiative at the Atlantic Council. We're funders. John de Blasio. One of the things that Ambassador Petrovic talked about is the importance of EU accession, and it's a strategic imperative that the EU move EU accession forward for these countries. Their demographics are poor, their hope is waning, and that leaves an opening for bad things to happen. And in the situation in Ukraine, it falls in the same dynamic. So strategic imperative for EU integration.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any other comments? Again, I think many of you were here for the speech with President Trump. I'd love to get any reaction if you find it heartening. Here, I'm just standing in front of you. I'm just going to ask you, what was your reaction? And where are you from?
Paris, France.
Ah, bonjour. Il y a longtemps que je ne parle pas le français. What do you think? You're in the heart of it. You saw Macron yesterday speak. Did this give you a sense of peace going forward, or do you feel any differently post-speech?
I'm not really sure of this, but we will see what happens in the future. We have to be... we have to protect the peace. What I'm saying is totally obvious, but the things are going on in not maybe the best way.
I don't know any other comments.
I would be interested, Diane, if we can go back to the former ambassador, to his response to the speech itself. I think would be an interesting thing to actually ask as a follow-up
Ambassador,
to what he thinks
the
about the actual, how Trump has here. We were getting a sense from the panel, from Mark and myself, that the president has come and he's just dialed down on the sense of looming crisis. But I was struck by Nigel Farage on the stage saying that there is a new way of doing business. We had Howard Lutnick in the Financial Times writing this morning that a new sheriff is in town, that they have not come here to join Davos, they've come here to confront Davos. And I think that the message is not about discussion and can we find a way forward. It's about, as Mark Carney said, rupture, not transition. And I just wondered, as a former ambassador, how you respond to that in a way that I think too often in Europe it becomes a rejectionist narrative. We just reject what the president is saying. Is that the right way forward? Or as a diplomat, what could be a way that business leaders and political leaders could craft a response whilst retaining their fundamental beliefs in the rules-based order?
Well, as being former ambassador of Serbia, I mean, I cannot resist but to go back to the Balkans in sense of, Serbia has suffered through a unilateral declaration of independence from Kosovo. That was the first example of a unilateral declaration by an ethnic group being accepted by some of the players in the West, including a lot of members of the EU and United States. And I gotta tell you, it's one of the examples that President Putin has used as a precedent that was first done by the West in destroying the international order that was in place since World War II. And it was the first example as such. And now it feels to a Serb that it's coming back to haunt us with these calls on Greenland and other examples. So I just couldn't resist but to be reminded that Kosovo really was the first example of kind of not respecting the international order that was established after World War II. So
I'm struck by you saying that. I remember I interviewed William Hague, who was the leader of the Conservatives in the United Kingdom, who went right back to the initial invasion by Russia of Crimea and how the European Union was then not keen enough to show that was not something that was acceptable to the rest of Europe. And there was too much sitting on hands and not enough response of strength to that first incursion that happened well before 2014, as we know. And that does feed the narrative for America around Europe simply hasn't stood up when it's needed without the cover of America, though I think, as Nigel Farage says, NATO itself and all the member states of NATO have actually sacrificed a huge amount on security when it has been US-led military action.
And elsewhere, yes.
Yeah.
In Iraq. Well, to go back again, in terms of international law and rules that have been guided by especially by the West since World War II and by the rest, President Putin has used an example of Kosovo for his reasoning why he's allowed by international standards to go into Ukraine and to go into the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, that it was the West and it was the NATO that did it first. For Serbia, internationally recognized UN member and a state, and that's the reason why he has the right, and it's up for grabs for the others. Now we see President Trump calling on taking over Greenland. So it's important for the international law and standards to be equal for everybody. Otherwise, we have nothing.
Thank you so much. I think, Diane, we have our next guests have arrived. So,
I'm about to
Diane,
break
come
into
back to
song
the...
as a result.